your first few customers could make or break your business. You have to make sure that your first customer is always around as your customer for the longest run that you have your company. Most of the concept I've sold very well in the market didn't work when we were selling it. If I try to do a demo, it would just crash. So we were only able to sell it on the merit of the value that we are promising to the customer and working hard on making sure the customer's value is delivered post sales. Investor is never interested in someone who's struggling. Investor is looking to multiply their money. So they are looking for the rising sun.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins. I'm going to be your host as usual. And in the studio today, we have Ravi. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Rick. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We've been waiting on this for what, 6 months now?
Yeah, since June, exactly 6 months.
Hey, it's like a baby COVID or something like that, right? Oh boy. So folks, I want to remind you, please make sure that you subscribe, make sure that you get all the updates as we're dropping them, and please leave a review. We'd love to hear love to get some feedback from you. If you love this episode, make sure that you share it with all your friends and family and all that good stuff, right? So without further ado, I would love to get started. So Ravi, give us a little bit of background, who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Yeah, so to keep things simple, right from the start of my careers, it's just that, if my boss would have an idea or somebody higher up would have an idea, they would leave it to me to find out how to sell that idea to the market. So I got my start with selling concepts and trying to figure out, whether the market is going to accept it or not. I became very successful in doing it. We ended up with 3 monopolies during the first 10 years of my career. And that experience basically allowed me to hone a focus on working with idea level or concept level individuals, or even established companies which have saturated their line of growth and they're trying to expand into newer territories with newer ideas. That became a recurring theme in people approaching me. Well, people know you eventually if you do something well enough in smaller markets.
Yeah.
So that became an ongoing inbound approach. A lot of people were referred to me, and eventually that became a core area of expertise, I would say. Rather, I would say, that's something I truly enjoy. I like to listen to people's ideas, try to, say, okay, hey, if we do this, we can probably do good amount of money from this. And if we present it this way, we may be able to attract some investments. And the investments, if we structure it this way, it might not require that you dilute your equity or incur any debt on your books. So those strategic discussions and the approach notes, the pathways that, we wanted to help businesses find or discover for themselves, in order to become a commercialized entity from being a concept to a well-articulated, well-defined, process-oriented organization, has been what we've been doing. It's now 20 years since we started doing this. Lots of, good ideas came, lots of, landscape changed. The technology, the cycle of change has been very, very, I would say the recent changes in advanced applied technologies and the accessibility it has provided through AI, the time it takes for some new idea to come in and to go to market has come down drastically. So what could take months before, now it takes weeks. In fact, if we have to take an idea and then we figure out if the market is going to buy that idea or buy the product or service based on that idea, it only takes 6 weeks, no more than that, right? So it saves a lot of time for the innovators. It saves a lot of time for the entrepreneurs, de-risks a whole lot of process. Even the investors, they get to see an idea working before they decide they want to come in. This is at a seed stage or pre-seed stage levels. So yeah, it's been a very rewarding experimental process or an experience process. It's just been a constant process of learning and upgrading. So that's what's been happening.
It's really interesting. I love that space. I've heard so many times, so many inventions didn't get to market just because inventor didn't know how to bring it to market. So you guys are really bridging that gap. So as a business architect, how do you get good at that? How do you build the skills to be able to identify those opportunities that look like you can build a company around them?
Okay, so believe it or not, there are very methodical processes available. Quite a few options available. The
Mm-hmm.
process we use is called as DESTEP analysis. DESTEP essentially stands for demographic. Just have to explain it in detail. But you study the demography, you study the environment, you study the technology, you study the societal issues, and political issues, and legal issues around the idea. And when you start, dissecting those things, it develops a blueprint of its own. So if you are an architect designing a building, and then if you want to put the swimming floor or a swimming pool on top floor of a building, you kind of have the vision, and then you know how to do this. So you kind of build out the entire blueprint. It is very similar to that, except this methodology helps you do that. It's an analytical method, and
Mm-hmm.
so far it has not failed. It works great. It asks questions like who's going to buy. So that's the most essential question everyone asks. What we have seen happen is the initial assumptions about who is going to buy and what happens in real time implementation could vary. I'll give you an example. A company which wanted to create a loyalty product, which would give out discounts every time you buy from a local store, a mom and pop shop, they assumed when they launched the product that it would be the younger generation would be using it.
Mm-hmm.
You get rewards. They would, use it on pubs. They would use it on entertainment, movies, or whatever, fashion accessories and stuff. What really happened is middle-aged men were using it to buy groceries. And if you look at the numbers, it was in 79% plus. So what happened with the idea is it transitioned into a supermarket chain focused on groceries, right? And the entire pivot happened. That product is still there,
Mm-hmm.
but the end users were completely different. So you can do this analysis and then you can say, okay, this is what is going to happen. But then you will also have to roll out your product rather very quickly and test a market. And you have to let the market teach you what you need to do. You need to
Yeah.
be very receptive to the market. And that is again a data-driven process. When I say data-driven process, we've been experimenting with some ideas in the last year. One of the biggest qualifier is how quickly there is a inquiry coming back to you when you start putting out that idea as a basic, let's say, ad in Facebook or Instagram or Google or any other place. You spend some money, and having some money is important in this process. Not too much, but just enough. Let's say you want to risk $1,000 and see what type of response comes in.
Yeah.
The first qualifier is, are you getting a response? The second qualifier is, how frequent is the response? What is the return on ad spend, right? What is the cost of each lead? And then the next level of qualifier is, are those people talking to you and essentially willing to buy from you?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the effort you need to put into the sale happening, the cost of sales and acquisition? Followed that by you doing the delivery for whatever the customer is giving. What is the cost and effort that goes into it? Now, at this stage, you start realizing a lot of challenges that you could not have perceived before. Thanks to the technologies that is available and the kind of tools that is available, if you have an idea for an app and then if you can just build a prototype around that, for us to validate whether the app is going to work or not, is going to be sold or not, and who's the likely customer you would need or who would want you to buy it, or your service can actually be fit for, that starts qualifying itself, or that starts emerging as a pattern on its own. To give another example, AI can create content, curate content, AI can host content now. We can automate the whole process. We did exactly that for one of our partners. The initial customers who came in, or people who were signing up, were former Miss Universe or Mrs. Universe, people who are doing an influencer type of activities, and people who are having products or e-commerce products that they wanted to promote, and then organizations which had services, authors, consultants. Those are the people start coming in. We quickly realized that we cannot cater to the segment which is driven by an influencer or somebody whose physical presence and personality drives the content. So that was an obvious learning, right? But when we started it, it didn't seem so obvious. It takes that kind of churn. Now we know exactly the favored persona to whom this product would work, and the disfavored persona for whom this is not going to be fitment. So now when the sales is happening, inquiry comes in, you immediately know, okay, this is not going to be a happy customer if we sell it to them. So we say, okay, sorry, this is not meant for you. But we also know who is going to be able to use it. And we also know what premiums that we can push those products for. So whole cycle took no more than 2 months. Now, if it didn't work, you kind of, stop the entire bleed in the first week itself.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, and again, the audience segmentation matters, the platforms matter, right?
Yeah.
The kind of response you would get from something like, a Meta platform may not be this kind of response you would get from, say, Google or LinkedIn. So which platforms to choose, what routes to use. In some cases, you can't even use these digital platforms. You'll have to go through various different means, network means, and other things. So that is determined why, one, your own experiences, your expertise in doing these things. I've been doing it for a lot, good many years. So I kind of have a reasonable insight into what could work. It's the emphasis on what could, it's not what would. We just, try and apply it and see what works. If you have to define something as an idea, like, whatever the idea is, believe me, there are 5 or 6 different ways you can define it. What you define becomes your resonating conversation or messaging to the market. And which one would actually connect to the market, you never know. So you work with 5 different ways of presenting the same idea and see which one actually resonates well with the audience. I've seen cases where, like, very professionally done design for a banner, for an ad, did nothing, whereas a very cheap looking, I mean, this is not my word, it's the guy who created it. He said, this looks cheap, but let's try with this. That just kept generating leads. More professional one didn't do that. Is it because this is where the psychography comes into play, right? So people who are looking at that solution, they are looking for something cheap. If it looks more costly, they're not buying it from you. No one dictates this as a scientific thing. There is no fixed methodology for doing this type of an aspect. Doing how to do, these things now as a process can be different. There is a factor of luck. There is a unknown always there with every idea you take to market. But you just have to figure it out and quickly realize that, okay, this may not work. That's what, we try to do.
That's interesting. I had a conversation not too recently about just figuring out, trying to understand what that jumping off point is. That point where, okay, you've taken this to market, you've done what you're supposed to do in terms of like a go-to-market strategy. At what point do you say, okay, you know what, this doesn't work, or even looking at that, this doesn't work, or this can work, but we need to make, certain adjustments to it. What's your thinking around that?
I've seen companies that would have exhausted millions of dollars of funding into pursuing an idea, which effectively they would declare as not working. It would have come to us as an escalation with a precondition that unless we can demonstrate that it works, they will not fund it further. What we would do is, okay, there is no money being given to us. Let's reuse what they've already done. Sometimes, the results were quite surprising. I mean, we did no change to their marketing materials. We didn't change their website. We didn't change their content, nothing. We just saw one endorsement from a big celebrity on their product or service and asked a question like, hey, this huge celebrity has endorsed your product. What have you done with that? They said nothing. We thought, he has a huge following that would do something for us, but nothing came out of it. I said, shall I promote that? I'll just put some money into it and see, what happens. It's safe to say that now everyone who can answer a call in that office were answering calls on a daily basis, and they quickly realized that the demand for their product was huge. Only thing is that there was something missing. Now, were we the champions to figure it out? In that scenario, yes, but not everyone has that, somehow it's a factor of luck somewhere, right? So you could be doing it right, but it might be just not done the right way. Everything about what you have is great, but just the people around you are not, the right type of people to promote it the right way. So it happens a lot. We also come across cases where the promoter or the guy with the idea, they're too stubborn. They would say they are suffering and they are, struggling, but they enjoy being in that struggle phase. It's kind of like dopamine. It keeps on, hitting that, I'm struggling, right? So it's a glorious failure thing. So they want to be stuck in that phase. So sometimes you cannot, help them, even with the right, steps or anything. people who are very responsive to data-driven change, who are very eager to talk to the market, very eager to talk to their customers, those people tend to be very successful. The key differentiator from this is that if you have an idea and if you're unwilling to talk to your potential customers, you're never going to make that happen. No one else is going to do that for you. You'll have to be the person who gets your hands dirty and then listens to what your customer is saying about your product. As long as you're doing that, it will work. And of course, from the idea to being able to talk to a customer, that's where, we'll have to do a lot of things. There are a few steps that we have to do. A baseline target we assign our customers is 100 conversations a month for good ideas that is responding well. If it is an enterprise class or B2B kind of a thing, then it could be as low as 20 conversations a month. That's like one conversation a day, which is fine, which is our statistics or benchmark. But B2C type of deals, it's 4 to 5 conversations a day, which is not much. 100 conversation a month seems like a lot, but 4 to 5 conversation can be had on a daily basis. If you're doing, that's the only thing that you're doing. That sets a benchmark. So 100 customers telling you what they think about your product, 100 conversations is a huge data. It's a tremendous amount of data to figure out what to do with your product.
Yeah. I think I was thinking in terms of like to get to those 100 conversations, just like how many dials do you actually have to make, in order to get those 100 people or so on the phone. It's just like,
we tend to make it inbound. So it's a high intent is what we aim for. Cold outreach, well, then if you want to have 100 conversations a month in cold outreach, you probably are dialing 1,000 or more. So that's a pretty high volume that you're allowed to dial. That, again, this is where, smart use of money would come in. If you have to have, let's say, conversations a month, assuming 1 person out of every 3 call talks to you, that's been a reasonable number. You can hire an agency based out of US. Usually they go for $3,000 a month kind of a price. You need to be able to give them data, and then you can source data from number of channels. There is no shortage of platforms which gives you qualified data. If your calling response rate is more than 50%, you're doing extremely well. If it is 30% or 33%, it's okay. If it is less than 10%, you know that it's not working.
Makes sense.
So, but your exposure is just $3,000 for the first month. The agency you're hiring to do the calling, if you're not calling on your own. But if you can do the calling on your own, you save that money as well, but you're still spending a lot of time. These are growing pains. You can't avoid that.
Yeah, yeah. I guess being intimate to the product too. I mean, you can ask, if you're doing the calls yourself, I mean, you can ask better questions and probably infer a lot more information. So yeah, I can get that. I mean, if you got the time to do it, I suppose.
So a few changes in your questions, few adjustments in the inbound, forms that you're capturing, data you're capturing. That does introduce a risk. In a sense, you might actually risk, turning away customers who would have otherwise answered. But if it is a necessary risk, you'll have to take it. That's a leadership call. And you learn from those experiences. That's all.
Yes. Yeah. That's key. What are your thoughts on like MVPs and like even, minimum viable products, and then, taking those to market, learning, continuing the development process?
So the people who do it very well, they have figured out the solution to it. So I came across someone who originally gave me this idea of them trying 6 different MVPs in succession of, a couple of weeks and throwing it to the market, right? Throwing it to the market. They didn't know which one is going to work for them. But the one that worked, it worked. But then what he also started selling is the route he used to announce those ideas to the market. And that in itself became a product. He was selling it at $50 for the database download. It has a toolkit kind of a thing. He figured out he's going to make money by selling the process rather than the product itself, that he had ideas, like 5 or 6 of ideas. All of them failed. Whichever, one path he used, that was working. In a sense, he stumbled onto a newer idea, right? The MVP, I mean, to better answer your question, it's like this. Most of the concept I've sold very well in the market didn't work when we are selling it. If I try to do a demo, it would just crash. So we were only able to sell it on the merit of the value that we are promising to the customer and working hard on making sure the customer's value is delivered post-sales. So if you can work with something that is demonstrable, and if you can articulate what value you're going to deliver, you should be able to sell it.
Yeah.
Right. And from the advance payments or, revenue you generate from the sales, you kind of invest everything and more into making sure that delivery happens properly. Your first few customers could make or break your business. You have to make sure that your first customer is always around as your customer for the longest run that you have your company with, right? So it is okay to go with just an idea. Tell the customer that, like, I'm trying to do this. This is the benefit I'm going to deliver to you. We have seen scenarios, this is again in B2B spaces, where the doors were opened up. All the doors were flung open. They took us to all the departments. They showed us every, use case that they needed, created. They showed what they liked with the existing vendors, what they didn't like, what they expect from a new product. We signed a agreement with them that, okay, for the first 1 year, you're going to get to use this product as for free. And second year onwards, you pay us, $100,000 or $200,000, whatever the benchmark was. Provided you are happy with the delivery. There was always a point of saying no built into the contract. It was linked to the performance. You have to take certain risks. But can you imagine a company like Tesco opening up your doors to look into their warehouse? That's what happened. Right? So airport authorities opened up their doors. They told us what they were looking for in a product. We interviewed 5 different customers from 5 different industries, each one spending 2 to 3 days, in studying their process, went back to the blueprint, built the entire architecture of software, went back to them and said, this is the first pilot version. Please use it. Let us know what the feedback is. Collected it, revised it, improvised it, continued to do that. And then before you know it, you're sitting with $1 million contract per customer, going into 3 to 5 years kind of a run. Rest is history.
So what is the funding like? I mean, you're talking, 2, 3, 4, 5 years pre-revenue. How do you continue to funnel money into these projects?
So the simplest thing to do is friends and family based funding, right? You could leverage some of your assets. As I said, it's risk versus reward kind of component, right? Before you approach an investor, make sure that you are able to actually build something and then realize that this is going to work and it's going to appeal to an investor. Investor is never interested in someone who's struggling. Investor is looking to multiply their money. So they are looking for the rising sun. So when you go and talk to an investor and say, look, I put some money into this. This is selling like hotcakes. I want to expand it to this territory. I'm just looking for somebody who could provide me this XYZ capabilities. I don't ask for money in most cases. I just say, can you manufacture for me? And this is the sales cycle and this is the churn cycle. Mm-hmm. So if they say that I have put at least 10% of the required fund to get the whole thing done, I think 90% is invested by these investors. A strategic play. When I say strategic play, they know the money is going to come back to them. The demonstration that you do is a de-risk investment, that there is nearly no risk to the investment they're putting their money in. And when I do this, I also risk very less exposure of my equities. If I go and ask for money, they're going to take a share from my company. If I give them a revenue-based proposition, I can structure it in a way that it doesn't dilute my equity. It doesn't put undue debt on my books, and it still allows me to do it, right? So that's one way of doing it. If you have the ability to do it, it is not always the case. Like with this content curation thing, we set out to do the sale. The first week, we did 5 sales. Second week, we figured out we can do 10. But then we ran into some issues with the integration things and softwares as it throws up. So we had to pull back on sale. But we now know that we can do at least 2 to 3 sales a day. We know exactly what campaigns are going to work. It's just 2 people doing it now. We need more resources. Mm-hmm. We now know that, okay, we can approach an investor and say, this is just expanding, would you like to come in? Who that investor is? It can be somebody who you know, or it can be someone who you don't know, right? Figuring out who's likely to invest on your program or product or concept is also very vital. So I look for people who would be able to, it's kind of like a plug and play kind of a thing. It's a strategic partnership type of an investment. So if you have something and if it can fit into a larger program with a bigger player, that is what they're looking for. There used to be this I mean, I'm throwing jargons here. Gartner likes to use jargons. Rapid Mobile App Development Platform, RMADP. Somebody had made it, right? A large company, a multi-billion-dollar company. We connected with them. IBM was one of them, but IBM was disfavored for the program. The company basically said, okay, we'll take your product. We'll do a regional exclusivity for Europe. Each year, we'll give you $5 million. After 5 years, we want, was it 3? I don't know. But they offered a total buyout of $55 million at the start of the conversation with a plan for next 3 to 5 years. So you're making $5 million each year by giving your product to that company to sell in a region where it is an exclusive thing, and then outright buyout. So imagine what you can do in 5 years with that type of money being guaranteed to you. Do you consider it as a sale, or would you consider it as a money you have raised? So we kind of look for these type of conversations with the market where like your requirement to dilute your equity is as low as possible. You bet on your value. You bet on the capability to deliver the value, right? The guy who is talking to me is not essentially assuming that you have a perfect system. In fact, no one who's doing this type of engagements would be assuming that everything is going to be perfect. A seasoned investor or someone who is an accredited investor knows the risk. And if you can find that type of a person who is likely to be able to make the maximum benefit out of your product or idea, you have built an investor. So that's whom you would approach. Finding them out is also tricky, but it's no different from finding a customer. You'll have to do the same practices. Do a broad stroke, make sure some inbound inquiry comes in, and then work with them. So don't approach institutions, don't approach venture capital firms. You don't want to do that. You want to find the ones who put their money into the venture capital firm. It's the same process.
Yeah. You're finding those diamonds in the rough, which, I mean, I guess any business is going to be, any successful business is going to be that to a degree. Say I've got a product, something that's novel, something that's new. I've got the right personality and funding and that sort of thing. What's it like to work with you? I'm going to approach you, say, hey, Ravi, I've got this idea. What is that conversation like?
So a lot of these people who come in there, they tend to expect a free service. That's one thing that I've seen, right? They say, I'm struggling, so I don't have anything. I just have this idea. You put your money into it, you come into this. They need to understand, I do this as a service, not as a investment thing. But I do not discourage their struggle. I recognize that the only reason you're talking to me is because you're already struggling with something you have. So we work at a fractional price. It's pretty much like, what we would charge for a hour is what we charge for the entire month. That's more like a token fee is what we charge. This is to make sure that the interest and commitment to the service is there. Next thing is there is no stopping once we start. In a sense, there is no barriers, there is no hourly limits, there is no specific scope of what we will not do. If we have to take a call and do the sales ourselves, we do that. If we have to write the specification document, we do that. If you have to do the negotiation with the investors, we have to do the negotiation with the vendors, identify the vendors, everything we do end to end, right? The objective is this idea good? You validate that very rapidly. And you make sure that that idea gets to the market and it starts generating the commercial revenue it should generate within a, reasonably expected level. So that's a journey component. So usually anyone who signs up with us, we never really get an exit with the customers we onboard or people who become, our partners. It's a partnership in the long run because, we make our money when they also make the money or when the business is making money. So it kind of is a very insistent partnership and there is no departure as long as the product or idea is working. And of course, if they want to say, okay, enough, from here, that's well and good. Usually it's like at least 1 year of, engagement is what we look for. Within the first 9 to 12 months, we should be revenue positive is what we aim for. So that's the approach we take.
Wow, that's bold. That's courageous. That is courageous. What industries do you see as, I guess, ideal for you? I imagine you work across, lots and lots of industries, but are there some that you find are like today are really performing really well?
So the shift or the trend right now is anything and everything that can be automated or anything that can, fit an AI quote in quotes is where it is going. So smart products or incorporation of advanced supply technologies into your service frame, that has become the norm right now. What it means is if you are doing a product, it could be a toy, but it has sophisticated, technology used within that. That's a product, that is the trend right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What it means for you as a innovator or a person with an idea, for someone like us, as a service provider, there is no one single company that can do all of this. And if they're doing it, they're doing it for themselves. They're not going to offer it as service. So you need to be able to work with web technologies, mobile technologies, advanced technologies, that's AI and other things, plus engineering design and manufacturing ecosystems and everything. There is no escaping it.
Mm.
You have to be able to adapt to applying these advanced technologies into whatever idea you're building. I'll give an example. Somebody wanted to just have a handheld, a device, a contraption, which you can put your camera to when you're having a FaceTime conversation. But that was meant for people who have some sort of physical disabilities or physical challenges, right? The person who came up with the idea was a veteran. Okay. Now, when you look at that product, you can probably, get that type of, contraption made in China with very limited investment and, at let's say 1,000 pieces and try to sell it, right? It will sell for some low price. But when you look at it as an application for the veteran community who have been in war and who have, physically, been handicapped or they've gone through, some physical trauma, which doesn't allow them to have this type of, contraption available. It kind of changes the landscape of where it gets applied. So it becomes an exclusive device that is only available to former war veterans, essentially. When you do that, it kind of creates a community of its own. And now every problem that is connected to the community, that starts coming back to you as a recurring, requirement where like a problem is an opportunity, right? So we had to restructure it that way, right? So instead of that being a $5,000 kind of at best type of a sales scenario, it just became something that is very exclusive. Designed for that, you design for military grade applications. The designs influence the camouflage or based on the arm of the army or whatever the defense wing they part of it, the logos, the trinkets that gets attached. And when you have the device with you, it also attracts a membership. Within the membership, you have access to certain resources which is not available anywhere else, or it's not commonly available or is even known. But
Yeah.
to that community, it means a lot. That becomes a very different program. Right. So you need to be able to work with these things. And again, was it just the product that you're designing, or is the entire framework around the service, framework around it? Just to throw in the advanced supply technologies in there, this could detect your bio indicators. If you're falling down, if you're sleeping or something like that, if you need help, there is an SOS available. It's designed to be voice activated. It is designed to be vision activated. It's able to read your facial emotions. So it's holding your phone, but is also able to do a lot of other things for you. Now, instead of being just a small box that holds your phone, it has now become a biomedical instrument, which requires at least $5 million in funding and takes a couple of years for it to be built. Or you repurpose existing technologies for your initial POC, put it out to the market and make sure find the right traction and get the right people involved at a later stage when you have the demonstrated action going. That's the recurring thing. Anything that you have, it has to have something more advanced, right? And that is an expectation because that technology is accessible.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Makes sense. We have to wrap up now. I know that you have a free offer that you want to give to our audience. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, you can discuss your ideas for free, and then you can have a roadmap, build complete, vendor ecosystem, the approach to how to take it to the market and all those things. We don't charge a dime for it. We rather work to make sure that the idea is well fleshed out. Say, for instance, this DESTEP analysis is conducted within that. Whom they should target, how they should target, what type of, campaigns they should run. All those things are given for free. And yeah, I mean, as long as they want to, say, hey, this is my idea. Can you help me, take it forward? we do the first step for them and say, this is probably the right way to do it. Would you like to take it for?
Awesome. And if somebody wants to take advantage of that, what's the best way to get in touch with you or your company?
You can go to the website and fill up a form, and the website is goglobal101.com. You can write to me at grow@goglobal101.com. So that's the best way to reach out. Yeah. As soon as it comes in, we always tend to respond pretty much the same day, as long as it's a working day.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we put that information on your show notes. So anybody watching or listening to the show, you can go to the page and you'll be able to see all those show notes. Ravi, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I learned so much, and I'm really grateful for your time.
I'm hoping, this was insightful, and my apologies for the dogs and the phone ringing and everything. I thought I left it in silent, but I have more than one phone with me. My apologies.
Yes, life is just awful. I think the unpredictability of life makes it exciting, so no problem at all. Folks, thanks for watching or listening to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. I enjoyed it. I hope you did as well, and we'll see you next time.